Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. I am Barb Stuckey. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer and President at Mattson, and we welcome you to our webinar. We have an amazing topic this time, so we're excited to get started. We've also got a great team from Mattson who's going to be involved, as well as Turner Wyatt from the Upcycled Food Association. So today, we're here to talk about product development with upcycled foods and upcycled ingredients and all that goes into that. So it sounds like it should be easy, but it's not necessarily, but once you know more about it, it will become much easier in your mind. So we are gonna accept questions from the audience, so please send them in when you have them. One of our colleagues will be gathering the questions, and then at the end of the session, we're gonna leave some time so that we can go back and answer your questions. There will also be an opportunity for you to send questions in afterwards, and we'll send that via a follow-up email. And of course, this whole recording will be posted onto our website as well as onto YouTube. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's talk about what upcycled is. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, and we're going to talk about innovation and product development. So the first question is what? What are we talking about? What does upcycled mean, especially with regard to food? So upcycled food uses ingredients that otherwise would not have gone to human consumption, and their utilization has a positive impact on the environment. So if you look at some of the data from our friends at ReFed, you will see that there is a lot of opportunity out there from a financial perspective in terms of figuring out food waste solutions. And what you see here highlighted in the middle is this idea of maximizing product utilization. There's a lot of other solutions as well, such as recycling and strengthening food rescue. But when you look at the solutions for manufacturers, in other words, those of us on the phone, on the webinar here today, everyone that's in food manufacturing, when you look at what we can do, the number one thing by far is manufacturing byproduct utilization. And that is another word for upcycling. And as you can see here, there's about a $2 billion potential benefit if everyone were to do this. So we're also going to talk about how some of the other parts of the world think about food and food waste. This is from the Environmental Protection Agency. They call it the food recovery hierarchy. And of course, at the top, what it starts with is source reduction, which means make less waste. And that makes sense, because if you make less waste, there's less that you have to do with it. So then as you move down in this hierarchy, you'll see that the ways that we go about figuring out what to do with waste become less and less and less preferred. The bottom being just dumping it into the landfill, which nobody wants to do. We think about this hierarchy a little bit differently at Mattson. And the way that our thinking differs is that before you get to the other steps in the hierarchy, there is a step that we're going to talk about today, which is to take those waste streams that come out of your production and to repurpose them. And we think about repurposing them as creating new value-added ingredients that you may sell, or you may use those ingredients internally for a closed loop inside the company, or you may create new branded products from those ingredients. And of course, as you see on our hierarchy, what we're talking about is from least to the most value. And you saw that $2 billion value opportunity in upcycling waste products. So we at Mattson have been conducting a longitudinal consumer study to really understand what consumers think of food waste and upcycled foods. We did this in 2019 to present at IFT, and then we just refreshed it last month, so it is hot off the press. And this is, just to make sure you're clear, it is a general population panel of consumers represented from all over the country. And we had about 500 consumers respond to this survey. So what are they saying these days? We asked them if they're familiar with the food waste prevention movement and the term upcycling. Food waste prevention movement in green, upcycling in orange. And what you'll see is that from 2019, there was a slight uptick in the number of consumers who recognize this term upcycling. And that's a little bit surprising because we are in very, very early stages of this movement, but very positive data. And then you will see also that there is a slight uptick in those who are aware of the fact that this is a prevention movement. And so all the indicators thus far are very good for this movement. We also like to ask consumers if they think food waste in general is an extremely big issue. Is it somewhat of an issue? Is it really not an issue that matters to them? And you can see from these incredible numbers that 99% of consumers surveyed, that's almost 100%, see food waste as an issue. Almost no one said that it's not important. So while they say this, there are differing levels of how it impacts them. So for example, if we ask, do you think it's important to do your part to reduce food waste? You get almost 95%. Food waste is a global issue. 92% agree with that. 90% say my behavior can directly impact food waste. However, when you ask people about the company that they work for, can that company impact food waste? Only 66% of them say that that is in fact the case. And then for people who say that they want to buy food and beverage products that use these upcycled ingredients, we get to a lower number as well. But still, it's 43% of consumers who are looking for these types of products. So if you're considering them inside your company, there's definitely a burgeoning opportunity here. And again, down at the bottom, there are just so few people that don't care about this topic that we have single-digit responses for people who say, I don't worry about this, I don't care. Rather, we're seeing that more people are aiming to buy products with upcycled ingredients. So 95% of consumers think it's important to do their part for food waste. But what is maybe not so surprising is that consumers don't realize that they are in fact the largest cause of food waste. So this question was about what contributes the most to food waste. And on the left here, you'll see that the consumer perception is that restaurants and food service are the ones that are contributing the most. And then second, it moves to individual households with 20%, and then down to grocery store, food manufacturing, and farms. However, if you look at reality, which is where we live, and again, this is data from ReFed, individual households contribute 43% of all food waste. And restaurants are second with 25%. But you can see that the reality of what's happening is really not being contributed or communicated to consumers so that they can take more ownership of being able to do something about this. And lastly, almost everyone that we surveyed, 84% in fact, say that they plan to buy more or about the same products using upcycled foods and beverages. So we're very excited about this topic, which is why we're here today to talk to you about it. The numbers look good, and again, in these early days of the movement. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Maddison Gurrola. She is a food technologist for us. She is also a standards committee member of the Upcycled Food Association. And we are very lucky and honored to have Turner Wyatt here, who is the CEO of the UFA. So Turner and Maddison, welcome.
Hi, Barb. Hi, Turner. So happy to be here. And today, Turner and I are having the great opportunity to talk about the Upcycled food certification and going through the process of getting upcycled food certified and ingredient certified. So, Turner, I was just hoping that you could start us off with the purpose of creating this certification and why the Upcycled Food Association decided to create it.
So first of all, hi, thanks Mattson for having me. This is a really important topic and we're excited to have this conversation. So Upcycled Food Association is here to be the center of gravity for this growing movement. This is the first consumer-based, consumer product-based solution to food waste, which means that it's really important that we have consistent and effective language and messaging that communicates what it is about upcycled products that we want to communicate to consumers. Some other studies that we've been a part of have shown that, like the facts that you just saw from Barb, most people are interested in upcycled food, but in order for that interest to take hold, in order for that interest to affect their intent to buy and willingness to pay, they have to know what an upcycled product is. And right now, less than 10% of people know what an upcycled product is. And so how do we communicate that to the millions of consumers that we need to if the upcycled movement is really going to take hold? So we created the upcycled, the Certified Upcycled program, which is a process that we've been taking on for about the past year. And what the purpose is to educate consumers about the impact of upcycled foods and to increase access to those products.
That's so amazing. And it's so important, as you said, right now, as we're gaining momentum in this area and really having the opportunity of all these upcycled companies entering this space and getting consumer knowledge in this area. So I wanted to take a step back and go through creating the certification, which I was very fortunate to have some involvement with as a standards committee member. But yeah, let's just share about the UFA's approach in creating the certification. And that started last June and walking through a journey to where we are today.
Well, it actually started before then, because before we came up with the certification, we had to come up with a definition. And the definition that Barb read at the beginning is the definition that we co-authored with Harvard Law School and World Wildlife Fund, Natural Resources Defense Council, Drexel University, and some others. And that definition serves as sort of a platform, but it isn't a tool that helps us decide which products are upcycled and which are not. We needed an actual process that we could evaluate individual products and ingredients to determine whether they meet that definition. And so we teamed up, we collected some world experts, including yourself, in the space of standard development and claims making and food product development. And over the next 9 months, this group of volunteers put in hundreds of hours to create the first ever upcycled certification standard, which is this document that's going to be iterated on into the future. And that basically sets the standard. Here's what your product or ingredient, because there's a certification for both products and ingredients, here's what it has to do in order to be considered upcycled. So it was a very rigorous and democratic process. We took multiple public comment periods and we're really happy with the result. And it's just the beginning. We're really excited to take the next step.
Yeah, and it was such an exciting process to be involved and really just world-class experts, as you said, making sure that it was not just eliminating waste and creating these upcycled products, but how to really verify that we're doing well for the environment. And for me, that was really exciting to be involved with and having all of this robust and credible group of people come together to create this process. So thanks for having me involved and like the whole team on board. And so now that the certification, it exists, we went through how it was created and touched on the importance, but I wanted to get more in depth on the importance in this whole ingredient certification, as well as the product certification and dive into something that I think before the certification existed, that brand unifying message.
Yeah, and just going back to what you were saying a second ago, consumers are going to see right through this if it is just a way to greenwash things that we've been doing all along, or if it's a way to you know, just normalize the waste that already exists in our food system. That's not what this is about. Upcycling food is about having a positive impact on the environment. And so we wanted this to be something that was really credible and that could be translated into, remember, this is consumer focused, into really easy to understand claims about what's the impact that I'm making when I'm buying an upcycled product. And so we foresee a future in which we can make really credible and exciting claims to consumers that, hey, for every one of these products that you buy, you're helping to prevent food waste, which according to Project Drawdown is the #1 solution to climate change. And so therefore, when you buy this product, you're contributing to that #1 solution to climate change. So that's why, regardless of the definition that we came up with Harvard Law School, my favorite definition of upcycled food is the way for everyone to prevent food waste with the products they buy. It's as simple as that. And so we know that we have to message that to millions of consumers all around the world if this industry is going to grow at the rate that we know it can. And no one company can afford that messaging on their own. We're starting to see bigger food companies join this movement. Even the big food companies don't have the budget or the clout to be able to communicate to educate millions of consumers around the world. But if hundreds of businesses all point their messaging in the same direction, then that becomes possible. And that's getting to your question of the importance of unifying a message. If we take all 150, and by the end of this year, we anticipate that our membership is going to be around 300 businesses, and that in the coming year, there's going to be hundreds of certified upcycled products and ingredients on the market. If we are using this certification not just as a standard and a tool for tracking and reporting impact, but as a messaging tool, that allows all of these businesses to sort of magnify one another's messaging and to ultimately move the entire movement faster. So before Upcycled Food Association was created, a study came out that anticipated about a 5% CAGR, 5% compound annual growth rate for the industry. We want to at least double that. And we think that by creating the certification that unifies all of these hundreds of businesses under one messaging strategy, points a unified, non-fragmented message at consumers that really communicates the impact that they're having when buying upcycled products, that's how we're going to see the CAGR of this industry grow double from what it was anticipated to 10 or even 15, 20% over the coming decade. So we're really excited because this certification is sort of the flagship for the entire movement.
Yeah, and that's so great. And one thing, just building on, it's not just a brand unifying message, but you're allowing consumer a tool to actually purchase what can have a positive impact with transparency and trust, knowing that there's this third-party audit going on, that consumers don't have to do the hard work themselves of knowing, where is this coming from? Is it truly safe for me? It's coming from a unified third body saying, yes, with this purchase, you are helping prevent climate change. And so we've been talking a lot about the consumers, and I'm hoping, since we have manufacturers on this call, can we just do a rundown on what the certification process looks like? I know you're starting a beta program with that, so it would be great to just cover what a company would do and what that process might look like for them.
Sure. Well, the point of this, again, is to give your product or your ingredient, probably more relevant for this conversation, the ability to make claims that are going to grow the sales of that product or ingredient, right? Because we know that consumers, as Barb explained, care about this topic. They're looking for products that can make these claims. And so let's help you make that claim so that you can grow your sales, right? So how do you do that? Well, it's a third-party certification, which makes it more credible because we're not the ones doing the auditing and making sure that it meets the standard. A third-party certifying body is. So the process is that you apply to have your product or ingredient certified. The certifying body goes through the audit, which this year is a desk audit for our kind of initial year of the certification. Once you get certified, you work directly with UFA to license the logo if you're a product, and we work with you to get that on your packaging and everything. And then you're off to the races. Then we take it upon ourselves to actually help grow the sales of that product by creating pathways to retailers. We have great partnerships with retailers that we're expanding on to basically get more upcycled products into store, have retailers feature those products, and then doing direct to consumer marketing strategies to help get those products off the shelves once they're in store, right? And so it's a pretty streamlined process. We hope. We're learning a lot about it right now. We just launched this program in beta last month. The first 15 or so companies are going through the beta program right now, and they're going to be doing so until the end of May or so. And then quick turnaround starting in June, first, second week of June, we're going to open the program up to anyone around the world. For this year, you have to be selling products or ingredients in the US. In future years, we hope to expand that into other regions. And but as long as you're selling products or ingredients in the US, starting in June, you'll be able to apply for certification. So we hope to see the first products with the logo on the packaging. It's going to be just an amazing moment seeing that first walk into the grocery store and seeing the first product with the logo on it as soon as this summer, fall. And what are we working towards? We're working towards a future in which consumers are filling their whole carts. Today you have organic shoppers, you have plant-based shoppers. There are going to be upcycled shoppers.
That's so
top to tail, everything in my cart is upcycled. Cosmetics, home supplies, baby food, pet food, food for myself, everything.
So look forward to that. And then one last question, since you brought it up, the logo, can you give us any hint on when that might be coming out and when we can see that?
Very soon. We are going to be releasing the logo next month. And we're really excited. We worked with a great developer. We did a lot of research that landed us on a logo that we're really proud of. And we're getting really good response from it so far, and so excited to share it with the world. I think brands are going to love it. Consumers are going to love it. Retailers are going to love it. It's going to help grow this movement by helping to grow sales of these products. So really excited to share that with you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Turner, for talking about the certification process. Really appreciate your time today. And now I'm going to turn it over to the CEO and Chief Technology Officer of Mattson, Justin Shimek, to talk about upcycled product development.
Hey, thank you, Maddison. Yeah, we're super excited to be here today to talk about this topic. And in fact, Mattson as a company has been upcycling since before upcycling was a thing. So really going back to the genesis moments of our company over 40 years ago, when I think about Pete Mattson, our founder, I think there was probably nothing that Pete enjoyed more than getting in his car and driving up and down the California Central Valley and talking to dairymen, talking to fruit and vegetable processors, and everyone really in between about creating value-added new products for their commodities, but also for their waste streams. So I think what's interesting when you think about some of the classic examples of upcycled ingredients, one of those that really stands out is, of course, whey. So really the byproduct of cheese manufacturing, whey protein is one of those things that used to be a waste stream, a byproduct stream that had to be dealt with, it had to be disposed of. But the data I've seen recently is, whey protein now is a $10 billion market. And when you think about literally what this ingredient fuels. It fuels entire categories of products, from nutritional bars to beverages to snacks. I mean, it's to the point where manufacturers, we've heard, make cheese for the purpose of creating whey and whey protein. So it's this classic example of the byproduct or the waste product becoming the actual main product, and something that's sought after and incredibly high value. That's currently happening today. I mean, food innovation doesn't stop. There's a startup in our neighborhood, Renewal Mill, that's doing actually many of the same things for the byproducts of soy and soy milk manufacture. So it continues to this day, looking for these opportunities to create value-added products coming out of these waste streams. Another really classic example is just in juice manufacture. You think about cranberry juice. You might even think, before cranberry juice, you think about craisins and that craveable branded snack that really came about by utilizing one of the really valuable waste streams or byproducts out of that juice manufacture. But again, this is an area where it doesn't stop. As good food scientists, technologists continue to look at opportunities, we always keep pushing beyond, just what's obvious and in front of us. And if you go deeper, you can certainly find other valuable streams of flavor, streams of nutrition, streams of functionality. And so, cranberry seeds is now one of these examples where Ocean Spray has talked about using cranberry seeds as an upcycled ingredient for powerful nutritional benefits. So, this is just the industry we're in, that we're proud to be part of. And so what I wanted to do was actually introduce a couple of our most passionate and experienced product developers, bringing back Maddison, introducing Kathy Westphal. And we're just going to get into a discussion today of some of the issues around waste streams. And so maybe I'll turn it to you, Maddison, first. Can you walk us through the general approach that we take to valorizing waste streams, which is the term I know that is used? And can you actually define valorization for us?
Yeah, so valorizing is taking something that was once of low value, so the waste streams, and then giving it a higher value and higher status and merit. So really thinking of elevating that item to a different level. And we have such an exciting way. And one thing that I love with our approach to the upcycled ingredients is our really holistic process. So we have clients where we will go to their fields and walk through from field through manufacturing to understand the full approach of where waste is occurring and identify these waste streams. And we bring in our commercialization knowledge to not only see in the manufacturing approach where it's existing, but how to identify ways that we can really valorize this ingredient without adding a burden to their processing step. And once we have identified an upcycled stream, our client managers create concepts that really bring this to life and fit with the inherent properties of that upcycled ingredient. And we'll go through and actually test this with our consumer insights team to make sure that consumers are receptive to it, or if there's any tweaking that needs to be done to the concept so that we can deliver the highest value product in the end that consumers find craveable, and it's still helping the producer eliminate waste from the get-go.
Yeah, awesome. So it sounds like part of the process can start out in the field, actually out in the manufacturing plant. And Kathy, I know that you've done a lot of these walks. So can you tell us what a typical plant tour walkthrough looks like? How do you actually go about understanding some of that early potential for waste streams?
So here's a great example. We had a client who was both in the fresh produce business and also in value-added produce. So the plant tour started out in the field, where they took us out to an organic field of vegetables. And they said, look at this field. We've harvested it already. And I look at this field and it's only it doesn't look like it's been harvested at all. Well, for them, they could only really sell about 1/3 of the produce from any given field because, you know, we in America, we like beautiful produce. So we've got 2/3 of the produce left in the field, and that's our challenge here for Mattson. So the tour then went to their processing plant where they do a lot of food service cuts and then retail products that are value added. And it happened to be a day where they were making carrots, and they were making carrot cuts for food service. So we walked through the plant, and it's just basically a washing, peeling, cutting. So you have the peels, the waste streams are the peels, you have the odd cuts. And this client was already ahead of the game, and they actually had a juice processing facility. So all those peels and those odd cuts all got conveyed over to their juice processing plant, where they were pureed and pressed into juice, and they also made juice concentrate. So we're walking out of the juice processing plant at the end of the tour, and here's this pipe coming out of the plant into this big pile of this beautiful, bright orange carrot pomace right in the dirt. And this, you know, we looked at this pile of pomace and we said, there's the opportunity. So I had the lab manager go into their lab and get some Nalgene bottles, and we captured a whole bunch of this carrot pomace, and we took it back to our lab here at Mattson, and, you know, then the product development started. So
excellent. Love it. I love that image. So a lot of it sounds like, you know, looking at opportunities, looking at value, trying to understand what's most valuable. Maddison, in some of your experiences, how do you go about identifying what are some of the most valuable parts of these waste streams?
Yeah, a different example. We were working with some citrus growers that had the issue of citrus greening. So that's a really unfortunate disease that's been happening with a lot of citrus plants, where the fruit ends up being lower bricks, so lower sugar and higher acidity and higher bitterness, which for the average consumer, they want sweet juice, not this acid bitter juice. And we identified that what if this bitterness wasn't a problem, but an asset? And how can we turn these traits that are inherently in this juice to, one, try and avoid extra processing steps to ease on the manufacturer, into something that the consumer finds craveable? So we concept and ideated it around creating a new line of sauces and marinades that were really citrus forward, bright, delivered delicious flavor. And then we were able to combine those savory notes from garlic and herbs to really complement the acid and the bitterness that already existed, to have this new profile and new product come out of it that's truly a value add, turning what was bad and valorizing it into a whole new concept.
Yeah, that's exciting. I think a lot of times some of the best opportunities that I've seen are understanding maybe what some of the virtues of the waste stream are, maybe, you know, fully understanding what some of the things you have to work around, and potentially identifying that killer app, that killer application for that ingredient. Kathy, do you have some experiences there that you can share just about, you know, identifying that killer app for a waste stream ingredient?
Yeah, I've done an awful lot of work with brewer spent grain. So here's an ingredient that was brought to Mattson, and there's a lot of variability among the raw material that you get. So is it from stout? Is it from lager? Does it have other components like corn or rice? Is it higher protein? Is it higher fiber? So there was a lot of work to just identify, hey, what is this stuff and what can we do with it? So oftentimes, for example, fibers have other functional properties so you want to get in there and look at the chemistry and identify and see, can it emulsify? Is it a moisture? Can we use it for moisture control? Stabilization. So, and then from there, once we identified that, then we can look at other applications. A great example in this one was we really focused with the brewer's spent grain on the bakery area, and we had a whole bunch of different streams. And in the beginning, we thought maybe the higher protein would be a better fit for that, but in the end, we ended up with the higher fiber product, and that worked much better. So.
Excellent. Maddison, anything to share? Any experiences you have identifying those killer apps?
Definitely, and also in brewer spent grain, but kind of in a different scope. So Kathy really talking about B2B and delivering that ingredient that's functional to other businesses. In my brewer spent grain world space, I had the opportunity to do B2C and trying to figure out where this upcycled ingredient can play for a new product or potentially a new brand that's fitting with the beer drinking occasion, but it also fits with the brewery and the whole full picture. And how can we get this upcycled item into the consumer's hands in a way that makes sense to the consumer, that's also really snackable for those beer products and makes sense to the consumer for why am I going to eat my grain while drinking my beer, and driving that interest while doing better for the planet.
Yeah, I love it. I love it when those not only those products, but those marketing messages can be really self-reinforcing, and you get into this really virtuous product cycle. So I guess both Kathy and Maddison. So sounds like we've got a lot of experience identifying the waste streams in the factory, figuring out what some of those really killer products could be. What are some of those practical issues that we need to tackle first? When we're now going to say we're committed to capturing and processing one of these upcycled ingredient streams.
Mm-hmm. So here's a good story. So again, talking about brewer spent grain, you have this lauter tun and it's full of brewer spent grain. So they've taken all the fermentables out of it. It's hot. It's 165 degrees. It's wet. It's 85% moisture. And now we have to cool it down. We have to stabilize it in some way. And we're in a brewery that maybe has no space for conveying it other than conveying it out of there and into a dump truck. So, in that particular case, we'd have to de-water it and dry it or freeze it. So that's a huge challenge for food processors.
Yeah, and really identifying with that food safety step also, who is going to take responsibility over that? Is that going to be the farmer that's producing it, or is it going to be the end business that's looking to acquire that waste material and incorporate it into their new upcycled product? And where does that responsibility lie? Or is there a third party that's negotiated through to ensure that food safety is being handled throughout their process?
Yeah, absolutely. And food safety is critical. Any other examples of folks that are practicing out in the industry that are tackling that piece of it, ensuring food safety of upcycled waste streams?
There's some great new technologies coming out, a lot of who are also involved with UFA, and one coming to mind that we're familiar with, Net Zero, which their concept is taking a dryer to breweries and having an irradiation step. So not only is it drying the spent grain, it's also eliminating that microbial growth through an irradiated process. And it's interesting in how to also help with the small footprint of their technology, really enable brewers to have a way to get their material dried and safe to then be processed elsewhere at that time. And that's a critical component in that if you can have a solution that can be deployed directly at the manufacturer, you're already making it easier and an easier access to be involved in this rescue step.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because a lot of food manufacturers that we're aware of, they have limited footprints, right? And they're focused on the things that they're doing. And so, yeah, if you can have this really compact infrared dryer that you can deploy broadly, maybe that's a solve to Kathy's problem where you could actually fit it into one of these small breweries. Okay, so a lot goes into creating upcycled ingredients. I guess for you, Maddison, as you've kind of worked through this, what kind of implications does working and incorporating an upcycled ingredient have on just how we approach product development?
Yeah, it's a really challenging approach, and one that almost needs to be done backwards from our traditional approach, because upcycled ingredients are inherently finite, which means if you're a company looking to scale nationally, you have to think about those volumes and really how much upcycled ingredient you have available for that year to then work back to your formulation percentage to make sure that you're not going to surpass your percentage, or that you have a reliable source going into it, or even approaching the development differently and offering it as, say, an LTO, so that you can allow that fluctuation with your consumers and knowing it's seasonal, there's a demand for this because it is finite to begin with, and conveying that message.
Got it. Yeah, seasonality certainly is a good point. I mean, all kind of crops have that element, and I'd especially think that when it comes to upcycled ingredients, there might be elements of variation that could impact our product development. So I guess back to both Kathy and Maddison, any advice, any stories on how we've handled that inherent variation or seasonality in some of our work?
Yeah, here's a good example. We had a strawberry producer that we developed through a patented process, a lovely, just pure strawberry juice. So what we developed this product from was from the culls of their fresh operation. And so it was the ugly fruit and such. So at the same time, the client had their own breeding program where they were trying to improve the fruit for shelf life for the fresh market. So in the beginning of the project, we had this lovely red high bricks strawberry, red all the way through, and it made this lovely red strawberry juice. As the breeding program progressed, the strawberry went to a strawberry that was larger, firmer, white inside. So the strawberry juice that it produced came out kind of pinky gray, and it killed the product because of that. So, and the bricks was lower as well. So how we would handle that would be to make more of a value-added product or a formulated product. So I would recommend to them, hey, let's not make straight strawberry juice, let's make like a strawberry lemonade, where we can maybe add some vegetable juice or fruit juice for color and a flavor. So no matter what the seasonality, no matter what your breeding program brings, we can still use those upcycled ingredients, but we can use them and have a more standard product that's more acceptable to consumers.
Yeah, and Kathy touches on a great point of having a team, and not only having them, but enabling that rapid development to be flexible with variation, and understanding that you might need a wider spec allowance if you're going to be bringing in these upcycled materials to account for that color shift or that size variability, and making sure that there's other guardrails thought of in place first of, okay, for this batch, do we need to add a little more sugar, or do we need to change our flavor profile slightly, and really giving the opportunity and investment towards that rapid development so the consumer's still getting a product that matches their desires.
Okay, well, awesome. Well, let's actually bring you, Carol, in on this. As an innovation manager here at Mattson, leading projects that start out at that fuzzy front end, kind of sometimes before we even figure out what the it is. How does creativity and concept development play into this whole area of developing products with upcycled ingredients?
Well, it actually starts with the company's commitment to doing something new and different. And that has to start with building a team of very passionate people who are engaged and interested in changing the status quo. So some of the things that Maddison and Kathy have talked about are well, there's going to be this fluctuation, there's going to be this variability, both with the crop material, the way it's handled. You have to have people that are very flexible in their thought process. And then it gets into the material itself. And a lot of times at the very beginning of the process, in the creative stage, you don't really have a deep understanding of every single material you're going to be working with in your concept phase. We have to reverse that in this process. And that core team has to really understand all of these challenges that Maddison and Kathy have brought up about how the material is handled. What is that seasonal availability? What's the shelf life? What's the cost for storing this material? And then build that into the concepts themselves. And as Maddison referenced, an LTO might be a great idea, because there is this finite amount of material, and once it's used up, it's gone. So how can we take advantage of that and play that up in communicating the future concept to the team? Not only internal teams, but then to the consumers as well in the future.
Yeah, got it. So consumers, I'm glad you brought up consumers.
Yeah.
Where does actually doing consumer research and consumer insights fit into this whole puzzle of upcycled ingredient utilization?
It is critically important. So we have done both qualitative and quantitative research on both concepts and products as we've developed them here at Mattson. And to build on that brewer spent grain example that Maddison and Kathy did, we were creating an all-family smoothie. And one of the ingredients we were putting in, because we were trying to put as many upcycled ingredients as we could, we had lots of upcycled fruits in there. We put in brewer spent grain for the fiber level and just having more upcycled ingredients in general. When we were talking to consumers about it, they were sampling the product, they liked it. But then when we showed them the ingredient statement and it had brewer spent grain on the ingredient statement, they said, wait, what? Brewer spent grain? This is for my kids. This isn't all, this is for my family. I'm not comfortable serving something that's coming out of a brewery to my kids. So although I like it, I like the idea, I'm just not quite comfortable with this. And then that impacted our development. So we got them the concept right, we got the product right, but how we were communicating the ingredients in the product to the consumer and why these things were there is really important as well.
Yeah,
so I highly recommend doing consumer insights along the way.
Yeah, no, excellent point. And, I think you raised another point. There's just a lot to learn, from consumers in this area. I think myself, I'm becoming continually more knowledgeable in this space. Are there other ways that we've helped our clients actually become more informed?
Sure. So it actually goes also not just to informing our internal client teams, it's also figuring out the right brand and brand fit during the consumer research phase as well. And sometimes it starts with educating our clients on what is food loss and waste, and what does it mean? What are all these levels and nuances? So we've actually built education programs for our clients to help them figure out, do they have a current brand that would fit and be appropriate, or do they need to build something new and different? So a lot of times a marketing team might be challenged with this new food loss and waste initiative, but they don't have an understanding of what this area is. So again, these education programs that we've built help train the teams and bring them up to speed as quickly as they can so that they can start developing ideas with the materials that maybe their R&D team has identified, and helping them build out the concepts for the future.
Well, great. Well, let's bring this to life. And Carol, I know that you've got a few case studies here that we can bring up on the screen and talk through quickly. So I'll turn it over to you for that.
Sure. So the reason I picked these three different case studies is, as Barb mentioned in the beginning about the recovery hierarchy and repurposing waste streams, these three companies each took a different approach. This is something Mattson did not formulate this product, but we really like how Danone created this line in their Too Good existing product line. So this is something that's already in the marketplace, and they created a single SKU within their existing line that it was addressing this and using an upcycled ingredient or upcycled material. So it was really unique in that it fit with their existing product portfolio. And the next one is they're using their own byproduct here. So a byproduct from the chocolate making industry is the outer part of the chocolate itself, and they're incorporating that fruit into the future chocolate material, which provides a nutritional benefit. So this whole fruit chocolate is providing an improved nutrition over their existing chocolate while minimizing loss and waste by upcycling the fruit into the chocolate base itself. And then our last case study is a product that we worked on here at Mattson called Kazoo. And what we were working on here is our client had identified this unique raw material. He did not have an existing brand. So he created a brand that was built around snacking with an upside. And so we're using a corn material in a tortilla chip, and it has a water reduction footprint is the positioning that he's taken here, but we're using 40% of the chip material is from this upcycled corn from the oil making industry. So a very unique way to take what was a byproduct and turn it into a great tasting snack. So our client came to us with this idea, with a starting formula or recipe, and he needed help identifying a manufacturing partner that could handle his unique raw material and turn it into a traditional corn chip, meaning using an existing manufacturing line that is traditionally used for the tortilla corn chip process. And we were able to run this, this upcycled chip base on the line, go through the traditional process, and then help him get it scaled up and commercialized from afar. This was something we worked on last year during the pandemic time, and we were all sheltering in place. So it was challenging to do commercialization from afar, but our team was able to successfully do that. And this is a product that is launching just next month in grocery stores in the US and eventually up into Canada as well. So again, this is something you can find next month. I think it's at two different retailers, one up in Oregon and one at Hevy in the upper Midwest. And then in addition to creating the original product line, we also created 4 different flavors that he's launching eventually as well. So the first one is going to be a lime flavor, and then into some additional flavor profiles in the future. Barb, back over to you.
All right. Thank you everyone so much for the wonderful discussion. We have about 5 minutes left. So we got a lot of great questions from the audience. Too many to cover in the next 5 minutes, but we will follow up with you on these. And there will be a survey at the end of the webinar if you'd like to ask us more questions. But where I would like to start is Turner. We had quite a few questions about the actual process of, excuse me, the Upcycled certification, and sort of one, what would that certification cost? So how do people think about that? And 2, if they're looking for more resources in terms of how to get started in this process, where should they go?
Certainly. So the standard is published on our website. And that's easy to find, upcycledfood.org/certification-standard. So everything you need to know about how much upcycled ingredients do you need to have in there, and what qualifies, what doesn't qualify. That's all in the certification standard. On costs, and by the way, it depends, basically. There's multiple pathways. We're looking to make sure that, yes, this otherwise would have gone to waste, and now it's not, essentially. And in terms of how much it costs, it's also tiered. There's volume discounts for multiple folks that are certifying multiple products. It becomes more simple if your ingredient supplier already is certified, has their ingredient certified themselves. So again, it depends, and those costs are going to be released in a couple months when we fully launch the program. So there'll be more information on all of that.
Awesome.
You can also reach out to us directly at Upcycled Food Association. There's an email address, certification@upcycledfood.org, for questions specifically about the certification.
Wonderful. Thank you, Turner. The next question I want to direct to Maddison. So Maddison, you spoke about Mattson's sort of valorization program. And the question is, how do we think about the nutrition of these upcycled ingredients as a part of that holistic perspective?
Of course. So one really exciting thing for me regarding nutrition is because it's a byproduct, especially if you're thinking of like a juice byproduct example or the brewer spent grain example, is you're extracting all the sugars out of it normally because that's what consumers want. So what you get behind is generally a really high protein or high fiber material. And so to Kathy's point of understanding the functionality of that, it's not just the functionality, but it's also what the consumer is going to get in the end product. And then we'll use that nutritional aspect to figure out how this actually benefits the consumer at the end. And for our concept that we created, is there a nutritional value that's inherently coming from using this upcycled ingredient? Are you getting that higher protein? Are you getting that higher fiber? And how does it compare? And how does that like drive consumers' interest in the product? So that all folds into our concept development.
Awesome. Thank you, Maddison. The next question I wanted to direct to Carol. So the comment is that, one of the big pushbacks or struggles with using upcycled ingredients is the cost to sort of make these ingredients ready for prime time. So how do you think about that when working with clients who are maybe new to the upcycled ingredient realm?
Carol, you're on mute.
So that's actually a very legitimate concern. We ran into that in quite a number of projects where the thought from both from teams and on the procurement side of the client, they thought that this material would be a lot less expensive than maybe the current standard, grade A material. And in many cases, it was the same or just slightly lower. And so it is something that you definitely have to budget in and plan for. And then over time, you will see a cost savings, but in those early stages, it's not just about adding, an ingredient that's going to cost less. It's something that does have to be planned for and thought out, because there's such a limited and finite amount of the material that you have to store it properly and hold on to it and then use it wisely in the formulation.
Wonderful. All right. So I know we are just about at the top of the hour. So I want to pass it back to Barb. And just as a reminder, if you do have additional questions, please feel free to send those to us using the link at the end of the presentation.
Thanks, Emily. And I want to thank everyone who participated today. Our most awesome CEO, Justin Shimek, Carol Borba, Kathy Westphal, Maddison Gurrola, and of course, our guest, Turner Wyatt from the Upcycled Food Association. Most of all, we want to thank you, the audience, for supporting our webinars. So please keep coming. Let us know what you like. Let us know what we can do better in the future. And then I want to also give a shout out to the two folks behind the scenes on our Mattson webinar team, Emily McHugh and Danica Samana, who keep us going and make sure we're on time. And on that note, it is exactly on the hour. So we're going to let you all go and enjoy your day. Thank you so much. And of course, if you're interested in developing upcycled products or creating upcycled ingredients, you know where to find us, mattsonco.com. Thanks, everybody.